Our speaker is Ko Aung. We're very, very grateful to you for agreeing to this and to Christopher for suggesting this originally. Ko is an Australian qualified lawyer practicing in immigration and refugee law with a client base spanning Australia and some countries around the world. And his practice covers protection visa applications, an extremely important question for university students from Myanmar at the moment. Merits review at the Australian Administrative Review Tribunal, sorry, ministerial intervention, family and skilled migration matters, and all of this gives him a broad comparative scope to talk about how Australia's immigration framework operates across these very different issues or circumstances of displacement, family, and labour mobility contexts. Within all of this, he has professional interest in all matters concerned with Myanmar and contributes to policy submissions, professional commentary, community legal education on issues affecting the diaspora here in Australia. He works with community organisations and sector colleagues on initiatives linking individual casework to broader policy issues and settings. Koko's interest is in ensuring that the policy debate on Australia's immigration and protection system, including its response to displacement from Myanmar, is informed by evidence drawn from the lived experience of those people most affected. So we're very privileged to have you. Thank you very much. And I'll pass the floor over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Uh, I'm just sharing my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. All right. Let me just welcome everyone. Yes, I'll be talking about Myanmar nationals and Australian migration system with a particular focus on the pathway available and looking at different policy and what can we do in terms of advocacy. And there are a lot of ongoing advocacy that has been happening since the coup happened in 2021 February, but whether they have been effective and what can we do more in terms of the refugee and migration matters. So before I go into the details, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land again and pay my respect to the elders past and present. And I just want to say that as someone who has come to Australia from a country still living through displacement and conflict, I'm especially conscious of what it means to speak about refugees and the protection system on the stolen land that has never been ceded. The question of sovereignty, displacement, and home that we will discuss today did not just begin in 2021. And I would like to acknowledge the AMI and the organizer for putting this seminar together. And so today is not a lecture on what the visa law and policies are, but it is a conversation about how Australia protection and humanitarian system is actually responding to Myanmar nationals in its fifth year after the coup, what is working and what is not, and where the advocacy level sit. I speak in my personal capacity, drawing on my work as an immigration lawyer and a migrant and diaspora community member, and my observation from the Thai-Myanmar border as well. Nothing I said today is legal advice for any individual case. So just these things, and now I will go into the details. So just there are altogether five topics that I want to cover. The first two are quite diagnostic, and the third is comparative. The fourth is forward-looking around specific reform asks, and the fifth is a share value on what we can do next. If we take one thing away today, I want it to be a clear sense of where energy spent on advocacy actually changes outcome for our clients versus where it just generates some paperwork. So just to setting the scene, as you know, there are internally displaced people of more than 3.5 million people from inside Myanmar. This is based on the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs figures as of 23rd of May 2025. So almost 20 million or more people requiring humanitarian assistance. This is roughly 1 in 3 of the population. And out of this 3.5 million of people, more than 1 million crossing the border every day, every single minute into neighboring countries like Thailand, India, Malaysia, and Bangladesh for regional refugee and migration flows and for their safety from the current regime. So Australia is currently sitting at the edge of this picture. Australia is not Thailand or Malaysia. We are not a first country of asylum. The cohort that reaches as is shaped heavily by who could already get a visa to Australia, who have family here, who had a skill pathway quite open, and a number of a small number through formal settlement. So that selection effect matters for everything we are going to discuss today. The cohort here dive into more on the younger, more educated, more urban Myanmar and ethnic groups. But yeah, this is what we are seeing from the Australia point of view. So if we're looking into dissect into all these programs, that there are quite a couple of visa programs in Australia, from family to skill to refugee to parent, relative, and so on. Um, I would like to dissect it into 5 that are mainly applicable to Myanmar nationals. So this is not a single group. The 5 streams sit alongside each other, each with a different leverage inside the system. In our community, they are not separate, but the law is quite separate. So what I mean by that is, so let's start with onshore protection. This is where the legal front line sits. This is for those people who are already in Australia, who have already passed, who are in the migration zone, and who have already passed and clear have already got the immigration clearance status. So even then, for Burmese nationals, the protection visa is quite. Australian government has been quite generous in issuing them since February 2021. But if you actually go and look at the tribunal data, Administrative Review Tribunal, which replaced the Administrative Appeal Tribunal in October 2024, if you look at the ART caseload, there are a lot of protection visa caseload. This is because of the large IAA error. IAA mean Immigration Assessment Authority for the and authorized maritime arrival, which are also a consequence of our Myanmar is quite notoriously inflicted on the unauthorized maritime arrival, especially Rohingya people and ethnic groups, direct consequences of all these things. And there are a lot of IAA backlog as well. What I mean by IAA backlog is these are the cases where in IAA the procedure fairness is very limited, and a lot of cases are now pushed back from the Federal Circuit Court, where tribunal member have made a lot of jurisdictional error and misapplying the law, and then now the cases are back at the tribunal, and there's a massive caseload. So if you're thinking about going into tribunal these days for the refugee matters, for the protection visa matters, it can take around at least 3 years for the tribunal to arrange a case officer and hear for a hearing. So that's the realistic timeline that we're looking at. And offshore humanitarian visa program is the elephant in the room in terms of Myanmar nationals who have been navigating through the from Thailand or from India or from Malaysia. But I have a slide on its own because a lot to talk about for that. Hundreds and thousands of applicants are competing for a very small annual intake, which is 20,000 people, 20,000 space available for this financial year, and it is rumored to be going to be reduced for the next financial year, and it's not quite looking good if we'll have to see how the numbers are going to be in next election, and if the other party win, this number is gonna drop significantly because of the national interest and all these things. So for now, I'll just park it there, and I'll come back on this in the later slide. And then students, of course, many were onshore in February 2021. Some converted to protection, or some are still cycling through student visa or different temporary visas with no real plan. And skilled workers, these are tighter cohort, concentrated in technology, health, and accounting, or CS world list, which means consolidated skill occupation list. If you have to be the occupation that you are currently working needs to be in that list in order to be eligible for the skilled visas. And there's some issues and delay in there as well for Burmese national, because especially in the form of getting a national police check from Myanmar, which is impossible. And government takes a while to process and these requests, special requests, and there's a delay happening here and there. And then there's a family stream about partner, children, and parent pathways, which take a while to process as well. I've got a few cases. In terms of partner, the processing time can be, government processing time can be a year to 2 years. But if when you're looking at child visa and so on, the legal definitions are quite complicated in his own. Like, what's the definition of a child? What's the definition of a dependent child? What's the visa that you're applying, child visa, or part of the or parent visa application as a child? What's the definition of dependent child in terms of children who are over 18 years old? What are the threshold? And on top of that, government tends to ask more information when it comes down to Burmese visa applicant. Sometimes they ask for DNA testing, which is quite a expensive thing to do. But government will still ask because because of the lack of documentation from the visa applicants, like they cannot get a certificate from the hospital, or they don't have an official birth certificate in this situation, and making things complicated, which is quite seamless in Western countries. And yeah, and then also parent pathway is quite notoriously long in terms of processing time. Government might take current processing time is like almost 8 years for the government. That's the minimum to process. So that's how what we are dealing with in terms of a migration program as of today. So now I'll go a bit deeper into the different pathways. So now, as I say, I have a slide just for this humanitarian visas. So if you're applying for a refugee visa from overseas, from outside of Australia, it's called a humanitarian visa pathway. If you are applying it in Australia, it's called a protection visa. So these names are quite interchangeable, depending on where the person is. So now the number first, 20,000 total annual places, and around 16,000 offshore applicants are waiting for this program. So around like 274,000 applicants on hand, and with those out of them, 246,000 of them are offshore. So this 20,000 the government is talking about is inclusive of onshore protection visa applicant and offshore humanitarian visa applicant. It's a combination of that. When you go and visit a refugee camp, the number is easily more than that, 20,000. But the government intake is a combination of onshore and offshore. Is very, very small number. At current setting, the existing queue alone represent over 15 years of intake, just to be clear, before counting anyone who lodged from today. The queue grows every year, and with a lot of everything happening around the world these days, the number is always increasing exponentially. For Myanmar national, the realistic pathway is a subclass 202 global humanitarian visa, because under the humanitarian program, there are four visas that you can tap into. So 200 refugee, subclass 200, which is called a refugee visa, 201 in-country humanitarian visa, 202 is a global humanitarian visa, and 203 is an emergency rescue visa, 204 is a woman at risk visa. So out of all these things, 202 is quite popular because um, uh, this is for those people who are being proposed by the Australian citizen or organization or permanent resident or eligible New Zealand citizen. So within 202, there's a priority list. So the priority order matters. So what the government aims to consider those cases where there's a split family provision. Split family means for those who are already holding a refugee category visa in Australia and they want to bring in their family. And when I say family, this is the spouse or de facto partner or children who are under 18 years old. So if you're thinking about family members like traditional brothers, sisters, siblings, uncle, auntie, they are not part of the split family member provision. All right. So and community organization or distant relative, they are a bit further down the priority list. And if you like, let's say if your friends or if you have an Australian friend who wants to propose a visa application, it's almost impossible to be considered positively by the Department of Home Affairs. So this is a very significant issue because families in May South are being told by unauthorized agents or like people are generous, they want to help out, and people are also quite desperate and because of the situation in Myanmar, so they just want to get out of the country. And Australia is a very attractive destination. And because of these things, yeah, there are a lot of promises that are uh, uh, not true, or it linked towards a false promise given by those agents at the border who will say like, oh, you can get a positive result in 1 to 2 years, but it's impossible. And this has never been true. The applicants are also being told that if you get an acknowledgement of lodgement letter, the visa grant is coming very soon. It's entirely false because acknowledgement letter means this is what happened, right? If you lodge an application in Australia online, not a paper application, but you're submitting a visa application online, getting acknowledgement letter is instant and in a minute or two. But for a humanitarian visa, not now, but it used to be a paper lodgement where government will take months to issue an acknowledgement letter. And there comes a false promise that, oh, when you get an acknowledgement letter, that means you're about to get a visa approved. But that's totally not true, right? So, and decisions are being made on those misinformation. People have to sell their land. There are a lot of debts being taken. Children pulled from the school. This is doing real harm rather than helping. So the most ethical thing a registered practitioner can do here is to be honest and about the realistic time frame, even when family does not want to hear it, and actively decouple the acknowledgement from the grant in every conversation. But not everything is quite gloomy. Australian government is one of those countries in the world that have a complementary protection refugee pathways that are available. So first instance, the one that I would like to talk about is a skilled refugee labor agreement pilot program. This is for the employer-sponsored visas, and employers are actively hiring those refugees who are skilled and got talent. And if I have to be very honest, I've been doing this program for quite a while, since 2021. This program was first introduced in 2021, and I have never done any Burmese people yet. Most of the people that I've been helping are from Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq because they have a very established community in Australia who have a business ties and everything, and they through connections and everything, and there have been a lot of cases from there. And another more practical issue is UNHCR registration. And as you can tell, for us, for Burmese people who are in Thailand, just look at the Thailand. Um, there's a structural issue there, right? For Myanmar national in Thailand, specifically UNHCR registration is very difficult to obtain. The Thai border camps are run by the Royal Thai government, not by the UNHCR. And even the term refugee, they don't use it because they are not a signatory to the Refugee Convention. And in Thailand, people who have to escape the country, like from Myanmar, they are considered to be a displaced people. They don't use a term refugee there. So UNHCR Thailand has only around 120 or so staff covering Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Most Myanmar refugees, displaced people in Mae Sot, Mae Hong, some the urban centers are not UNHCR registered. So even if you want to try this program, you are already stuck under the identification issue. It's not just that. Almost all the complementary pathway that Australian government has designed, you have to have a UNHCR registration. And there's another program the government has created back in 2024, which is a student settlement program, where it started with just 20 students, and now the program itself is growing a lot. We are our firm is one of the partners, immigration firm that help lodging the visas, and just last week we have done quite a number of cases for Myanmar nationals, mostly from ethnic groups, where they have a UNHCR registration, which is a good thing for the students, for the young people to have a dream have a very constructive uh, dream, have a real dream about finishing their studies in Australia, where they have to stop studying for various reasons back in Myanmar. And again, I have always raised this with the program director for ISSB as well, that if you are thinking about getting more students from Myanmar, then you might have to think about how to find a way to second go across that UNHCR registration issue, because there are a lot of talented, a lot of educated, a lot of hungry Myanmar nationals, and a lot of CDM affected people who are very smart, who have a lot of future but being broken down by the everything happened in Myanmar, and they cannot get an access to these programs because of UNHCR, which is quite absurd. But this is how, because for them, these program directors, they are also, the hands are very tied at the moment because they are just piloting the program. So they don't want to rock the boat too much with the Australian government as well. But it's good that these programs are already started, and we'll have to wait and see how they actually start, uh, you know, um, develop, and what are the leeways, right? So, and then there's a community refugee integration and settlement pilot program, and also the barrier is UNHCR referral. If no referral, then no access. So under the subclass 202 visa, if I go back with the 202 visa, the Australian government has this approved organization, community organization that can that can sponsor the people as well. But what happened with all these approved organization, they are no longer operating, they are no longer accepting new applicants, because even their applications are taking around at least 8 years to process by the Australian government. This is where you have to pay around like 4,000, 8,000 to per applicant to the approved organizations like IOM, SSI, where they will be the proposer, like Australian organization proposing. Even then, they're quite popular back in the days. Even they have already stopped proposing people since 2023, 2024. That's what's happening at the moment. So this is the current limelight of what's happening for offshore humanitarian visa program. But if it is onshore, there are a huge spike in the number of lodgement from 2021 for Burmese people for a very obvious reason. And the substantial success rate for Myanmar protection applicants has actually been very high. If you look at the Australian government's data and statistics at the Department of Home Affairs, we are one of those highest numbers, around 90%. never drop from 90%. And turnaround at a primary stage is often shorter than for other caseload. So we get the decision within 6 months to a year on average, compared to other passport holders from other countries where it will take like 3 years for the department to process. But people in the community do not see it that way. That's my observation is they see their colleagues, their friends waiting and feel they are competing. I understand the anxiety, but the system does not work that way. So one person grant does not mean that it will apply the same to another too. And also this is just my personal experience as well, is there's also another bigger problem is who is helping them, right? A lot of community members try to help each other, which is very generous, but many are not registered migration agents or lawyers. So what I see is applicants are being lodged with credibility gaps, missing evidence, inconsistency between the statements that the department then runs an interview. These are fixable problems if addressed very early, but it's very hard to fix once a refusal is on the record. And right, and it's not just getting the protection visa or so on, right? During the journey between there is also very essential. People have to live with bridging visas and so on. If you miss one thing, there are a lot of consequences to your right to stay in Australia, lawful stay, and then also work rights and so on can be affected. So have to be very careful in navigating all these things. But so far is quite all right. But I also add in little planning for what comes next. This is my personal observation as a community member, not as a lawyer, right? So, for example, for those people who have been in Australia for quite a long time, they kind of know what the plans are going to be. But right now, a lot of people get protection visas and get a permanent residency quite early on. And then also there are a lot of people who do not really have any plans to stay in Australia from the start. But for the various reasons happening back home and because of their status, they just have to, but no choice, they just have to remain in Australia. So their plans are being shifted, their life goals are changed, and I've seen a lot of younger generations who are lost, even after getting a PR. Like they stop studying or in between jobs or still couldn't figure out what their plan is going to be. So I always have to remind my friends or my clients that you need to also plan your life a little bit more than just getting a permanent residency status. This is just one issue out of a lot of bigger issues that we have to navigate in life. So yeah, that's not relating to immigration, but these are something that we observe. And country information is quite important as well because the Department of Foreign Affairs, they actually produce all these very detailed country information report, and it's not very up to date. In my opinion, the latest one is in April 2025. Right now, the government has already done a Senate inquiry on the democracy in Myanmar. Now is the time for them to also update with the sham election that happened at the end of last year, at the start of this year. So these things needs to be updated so that these country information reflect what's actually happening in Myanmar. Oh yeah, and these are non-protection pathway. There are a lot of other people who do not want to seek asylum and they just are going through the non-protection pathway. So student cycling, due to interest of time, I'm gonna just move quite fast. There's also skill migration for those people who are already employed with the employer sponsor, and also who has the skills to apply their own individual skill pathway. And a partner, family, and ministerial intervention, right? I've done quite a fair bit of cases of ministerial intervention where those people who are already arrived to Australia as an unauthorized maritime arrival, who have their refugee claim, asylum claim being refused before 2021, but due to new country information, if you want to launch another protection visa, you cannot do it straight away. You have to ask the minister to lift the bar. That's called a minister intervention, where you want to launch a protection due to a new country information or new refugee reason, and so that's what we have been seeing. Let me just go to the next. So I would also like to address the planning level that was announced by the Australian government a few weeks ago. I think it's last week, actually, not a few weeks. Total program is at 185,000, but this composition has changed materially. Around 70% of these places are now explicitly embarked for onshore applicants. That onshore tilt favor most of our Myanmar caseload that are already here. Employer sponsor visa is a big shift up over by 14,000 places. Now around 44% of the entire skill string. For Myanmar clients who are already on work visa, this is the most realistic permanent residency conversation that we will have in the year to come. And then 189 skill independent visa is also increased by around 4,000 places. But in practice, the point cutoff and occupation priority have narrowed sharply to healthcare, teaching, and social work. So many of our Myanmar clients in IT, accounting, and engineering may not benefit from the headline increase. And then also a regional visa. This is quite interesting because they actually reduce the number of regional visa settlement. They halve it. So this is so what I observe from this is those people who are already in Australia, there are a lot of different visa options for them to navigate, right? But now because of this, less chances for the offshore, especially offshore humanitarian program pathway, where more work is needed. But yeah, it's never the case with the Australian government for so many years. So I'm just gonna skip that. I'm just gonna look at the comparative lens that I've experienced. So if you're going to look at how government treat with other countries, right? So for example, when the Ukraine Russia thing happened, Australia government has created a temporary humanitarian pathway like subclass 786 visas. There are a lot of fees waiver, fast track grants, and even Medicare are being issued. And there is a very clear and time limited timeline and very stable, right? And then for those 786 visa holder can go on to work visas and any other PR pathway available, which is I've never heard about Burmese individuals getting a subclass 786, and it's only for those people who are unauthorized maritime arrival. If you look at all the case laws for 786 from Myanmar, it's all Rohingya, right? So that's how it is. Right? And if you look at Afghanistan, I was when the Taliban, when the Kabul fall to Taliban in 2021, I think it's around August, where a lot of legal clinics are helping them, Afghan people lodging all these temporary visas. This is the visa, like subclass 449 evacuation visa. 449 visa is called a temporary humanitarian stay visa where you cannot apply for it. This is where the minister you can ask the minister to grant the visa. So you cannot apply for it, you can ask for the minister. So this is the minister discretionary power to Minister of Home Affairs, Tony Burke, power to grant those visas, right? So 449 evacuation visa, government has issued many of them. And once the person arrive in Australia, 449, then they can actually move on to this chef safe haven, temporary safe haven visas and so on. So yeah, and then now 2 years, I forgot when. Now all those temporary protection visas did not have a permanent pathway before, but now they have a PR pathway available, which is called a resolution of status, which is subclass 851 visa pathway available for them. So it's pretty good, right? And when you look at Hong Kong nationals, I think it was the time when Scott Morrison was still power, where he made an announcement. I still remember seeing his speech on the TV where he announced a lot of concession for Hong Kong national due to conflict with China, where the Hong Kong nationals are automatically granted with 5 years visa extension. And automatic. You don't have to ask for it. The government will just extend it, and then there's a direct permanent pathway for them for the Hong Kong cohort. Right. If you look at Myanmar, yeah, it's good that protection visas are decided quickly and high success rate, but we don't really have that government announcement that, hey, for Myanmar nationals, we are going to be helping specifically with this visas. Right? There's nothing, right? It's a default protection setting only. So this is just a comparative analysis. Maybe there are a lot of work to be done in the advocacy and lobbying side of things to get more out of it for our country nationals, for our nationals. So what I would like to if I can, if I have a magic wand, I would like to have these specific asks to the government is allow the non-UNHCR referral pathway into those complementary pathway that the government has created. And also recognize, well, we're not asking for anything unusual. We're just asking for things that are happening currently on the ground, about how hard, how difficult the situations are for Myanmar nationals with getting a registration process. And then also restoring the proposal rights for A66 holders to their family members other than children and partners. So I have a lot of inquiries who are protection visa holder, like, oh, can I sponsor my brother, siblings, uncle, auntie? You can, but the processing time is very, very long. And then also in the priority list, you are looking at very low priority. So refusal is quite looming, and 20,000 space, we have to remember, which is very, very small. And then also procedural fairness and protection case. This is not just for Myanmar. For all the tribunal related case, there should be a better procedure. I mean, it's a lot better in administrative review tribunal regime compared to the old AAT, Administrative Appeal Tribunal, but a lot of work still needs to be done. And also tying the immigration setting to defect Myanmar sanction posture and ASEAN engagement and so on. So this is a personal project that I'm currently doing, which is I have requested information and data from under the Freedom Information Act about protection and bridging visa caseload, offshore humanitarian by subclass. I used to do that quite a lot until 2024. The latest Freedom of Information statistics I have, only 15% of all the caseload that Australian government has for offshore humanitarian visa have been decided. The rest are refused or decided positively. The rest are being refused or still under processing. There's a lot of backlog going on with the humanitarian visa. Yeah, I'm trying to work things out. If anybody have a casework data or country evidence, live experience or sector connection that could strengthen the submission, please be in touch with me. These are my details. So there are three groups of people that we should rely on in advocacy work, right? They're practitioners, like me and any other people who can talk about what the situation is. The law is this, but the reality is that. And because what I mean by that is, if you look at the law for a humanitarian program, they will be asking about discrimination, persecution, everything that Burmese nationals in Thailand can meet easily, right? The legal boxes can be ticked. But the problem here is not about the ticking the boxes. It's about the or the queue and the space that Australian government have allocated. And research institutes, country information, expert evidence, comparative policy analysis, and so on. And then one thing that I come across with other diaspora community is the sharing the experience. Storytelling is quite important these days, and we need to encourage our diaspora members to share their stories especially Refugee Week coming on very soon. Not, I think it's a countrywide initiative. I'm not sure, but in Sydney, Refugee Week is coming on very soon, and where you can actually book those refugees to speak their stories, and I hope that more of our people can share. So those who have already arrived in Australia to share how their struggles and so on, so that Australians will know, and this is how you co-build. So yeah. So I'm gonna just skip it, and I'm more than happy to take the take questions, and I'm happy to share this presentation slide. I can send it off to AMI, and then AMI can share to the participant here today as well. Thank you all for listening.